given that you might get a 30% reduction in inventory, to what extent did you prepare manufacturing or producing significant amount less?
Yeah, there's a great question, and it's one you absolutely should look at, and it depends product by product, buffer by buffer. There'll be some that you don't need to prepare too much for, because some products will by and large be at about the right inventory. So you're sort of batching up the making what you sell type rhythm. For products typically that were hellishly overstocked, DD is not going to tell you to replenish for a while until your glide path comes down. And depending on the system that you choose, there will be different functionalities available to you, but you can manage that glide path. So management of your ADUs, management of your buffers, you can say, okay, I know the buffer wants to get me right down here, but let's not do that straight away, because I don't want to switch the factory off for 2 months. That would cause me all sorts of other headaches. So let's go down in a graduated glide path and come down just more sensibly. And you would use your, typically you would use your go live planning to do that, blended with your DDS and OP. So in your DDS and OP, that's where you're doing your buffer management. And if you see a bit of an off the cliff edge kind of transition, okay, just soften it a little bit and come down more slowly so that you don't create that, because at the end of the day, you don't want to create shockwaves in the plant, because that's one of the benefits that you're selling in DD, is that you create a more stable environment for the plant. And you know, so yes, it's a great question. Think about that. And that's a SKU by SKU, plant by plant, production line by production line. You need to look at that and just see where the impact is. So I guess I'm out of time. Any last questions?
Yeah. Maybe there are a lot of presentations on the integration of SNOP and DDMRT.
Yeah.
How did you tackle that tactical planning and integration with the execution planning?
It's a really great area, and it's one of the areas that was probably the most successful in the human space. SNOP traditionally, everybody hated it. It's difficult because the forecast's always wrong. It's always a blame game, and I was the planning excellence manager for 10 years, and I'd rebooted SNOP twice, and people still hated it. It was a difficult process. Moving to DDSNOP, where we manage the buffers, manage the config of the buffers, and we start looking at inventory projections forward, not just in actual inventory numbers, but in pallet spaces, in warehouse spaces, in truck spaces, casting that forward using your buffer logic. And again, depending on which system you may choose to do this in, some systems are, not all systems are born equal, so some systems will be slightly better at this than others, but the system we used could cast forward both at a production line level, warehouse level, pallet space level, based on the config of the buffers. So that kind of view forwards into that tactical longer term horizon was very easily done. Not I say very easy, nothing's very, very easy, but it was a very obvious thing to do. But importantly, it was received really, really well by the people in those forums. SNOP suddenly became meaningful, because you'd taken the noise out. You were talking about buffers, you were talking about proper projections based on the levers that you'd done. And if you could see a promo coming, if you could see a tender coming, or a shutdown, the processes that we built could all handle those things in the buffer management. So it's generally speaking, the feedback was really, really good on SNOP. So it wasn't as hard as possibly your question, might allude to, I think.
But then you were only forecasting on tactical and strategical level, and no forecast on execution level.
That was still work in process actually when I left, because it's obvious that you can forecast at a different level. You don't need to forecast the day, the week, all of that kind of minutiae forecasting, which drives people nuts in the MRP world. I've done demand sensing. I've got that in spades. But changing the forecast process, I parked to one side to get the main transformation done. So my colleagues that are still there, who used to report to me, are now doing the transition of the forecasting process just to take some of the detail out. Don't forecast minutiae of detail. You don't need it. You need it for other things potentially, but you don't need it for management of buffers, management of execution. Is that an answer? I'm around. We are definitely out of time, I guess.
Yeah,
so I'm around for the rest of today and tomorrow. So honestly, please, you're more than welcome to catch me and get any question you want to me. If you buy me a beer later, you can have 2 questions.
Right. Very good.